In complying with the request of the publishers of the Nations series to write the story of Hungary, I undertook a task which was out of the range of my previous literary undertakings, which had for the most part been devoted to the geography, history, and philology of Central Asia. The principal reason which induced me to enter upon what is for me a new literary field was my desire to make American and English readers acquainted with the record of my native country, and to present the various phases of the history of Hungary in the light best suited to attract the attention of the citizens of England and of the great republic, to whose opinion we Hungarians are by no means indifferent. My willingness to prepare the present volume was further due to the fact that it was not the history but the story of Hungary I was asked to write, an undertaking in which I had simply to deal with the salient events, the most noteworthy personalities, and the most thrilling episodes in a narrative which covered nearly 1,000 years, and was not called upon to consider the philosophical side of the history, or to discuss the deeper lying motives, or the less significant details of national action. For a task such as that presented to me, I concluded that the knowledge and the ideas of a Hungarian man of letters were not inadequate. I have nevertheless had recourse in certain instances to the assistance of writers who had given special attention to our national history, with the idea of making as accurate as possible this, the first story of Hungary written in English. The distance between Budapest and New York rendered it possible for me to give my personal attention to the proofs while the volume was being put into type. The proofreading was therefore entrusted to the care of Mr. Louis Hilprin, a gentleman who is evidently thoroughly familiar with the subject, and to whom I desire to express my obligations not only for the care he has taken with the proofreading, but also for his attention in securing in my English text the most accurate and most effective forms of expression. I take this opportunity of expressing also my thanks for the kind cooperation of my countrymen, Messrs. Sebastian, Czesanki, Aksadi, and Varga. A.V. Budapest, August 1886. Alexander Petőfi, the great Hungarian poet, in one of his beautiful poems, sings thus of his native land: "If the earth be God's..." Alexander Petőfi, the great Hungarian poet, in one of his beautiful poems, sings thus of his native land: "If the earth be God's crown, our country is its fairest jewel." And truly, were we able to ascend the airy heights and obtain a bird's eye view of Hungary, we would fain admit that it is one of the fairest and most blessed spots on the face of the earth. In the northwest of Hungary, on the banks of the Danube, begins the mountainous region known under the name of the Carpathian Range, which for beauty is not surpassed by the Alps, and in extent fairly rivals them. This mountain range is encircling like a gigantic evergreen wreath. One half of the country extends all along its northern boundary, and after enclosing the eastern portion of it stretches westward to where it is intersected by the waters of the Danube, not terminating there, however, but branching off into the countries lying along the lower course of that river. The whole range of the Carpathians is characterized throughout its immensely long course by considerable breadth, forming at some places quite a hilly country and high plateaus, as for instance in Transylvania, which, although properly belonging to Hungary, formerly enjoyed a sort of independence under its own name. This territory is covered almost entirely by the Carpathians, but of course designated here by different names. We shall proceed now in due order. In the northwest, there where the Danube enters Hungarian territory near Deveni, the mountain chain begins, under the name of the northwestern Carpathians. These, describing the shape of a half moon, extend from Pressburg, Posoni, to the Hernad Tarsa Valley. Formerly, 3 groups only were mentioned in connection with this section, namely the Tatra, Fatra, and Matra, a representation of which as well as of the 4 rivers. A representation of which, as well as of the 4 rivers, the Danube, Theiss, Drave, and Save, is embodied in the arms of the country, whence Hungary is designated as the country of the 3 mountains and 4 rivers. The northwestern Carpathians are, however, a gigantic mountain mass of immense bulk, subdivided into several distinct ranges. Of these, one, the northwestern border, the northwestern border mountain range, starting near the Danube in Pressburg County and extending in the shape of a wide arch in a northeastern direction, as far as the sources of the Arva River, divides Hungary from Moravia, Silesia, and Galicia. The ridge is constantly rising and reaches the highest elevation at its northern edge. Another range is the Little Krevan, which begins in Arva County and extends through the flatlands between the Vag and Nitra rivers. East of this are the Gomor mountain range, famous for its stalactitic caves, including Agtelek, the Matra range extending from Miskolc to Vach, and the loftiest of all the High Tatra, whose highest peaks are those of Jegvolgi, Gerlach, Falva, and Lomnich, rising to an altitude of between 8,000 and 9,000 feet. The mountains belonging to this group are snow-covered, and what renders them peculiarly interesting are the so-called Tengersebmek, eyes of the sea, limpid lakes of unfathomable depth, which according to popular belief are connected with the sea and about which a good many old-time legendary tales are current amongst the people. These lakes are met with at the height of 1,900 meters above the level of the sea. That range of mountains which extends eastwards from the Hernad Tarsa Valley to the southeastern angle of Marmaros County is called the Northeastern Carpathians. It includes the wooded Carpathians and the Eperjes Tokai range, in the southern part of which the Hegyalja, the king of the wines, the famous Tokai wine, is produced. The southeastern chain of the Carpathians divides where Marmaros County, Transylvania, and Bukovina converge into an angle, forming several main lines which enclose the territory of Transylvania in an almost quadrangular shape and give it the character of a high plateau. The name of this group is the southeastern Carpathians. Parts of it are the Transylvanian northern and eastern border ranges, the Harghita range, with the remarkable Mount Budos, containing several caves from which issue strong gases, and the beautiful Lake of St. Anna, at a height of 950 meters, the southern border range, the largest and most massive portion of the Carpathian Mountains. The mountain group of the Banate and the mineral mountain range of the Banate, the latter owing its name to the gold, silver, and other ores, as well as the coal abounding in it. This group projects as far as the basin of the Danube and forms there the passes known as the Iron Gate, which greatly impede navigation. To the Transylvanian Hungarian range, extending north from the Maros River, belong the mineral mountains of Transylvania, rich in gold and other ore, and the mountain called Kiraliago, which marks the frontier between Hungary and the independent Transylvania of old. 38 passes lead from this mountain system of gigantic dimensions, partly into the countries adjacent to Hungary, partly into the regions divided by them. Of these, the most important are the Jablunka Pass, communicating with Silesia and the valley of the Vistula, the Verechke Pass between Munkacs and Strai, supposed to be the pass through which the Hungarians entered their present country, the Radna Pass leading into Bukovina, the Ojtos Pass communicating with Moldavia, the Tomos Pass leading to Bucharest, and the Red Tower Pass leading into Little Wallachia. Beside the Carpathian Mountains, Hungary also contains a less considerable portion of the Alps, belonging to the so-called Noric Alps. They lie in Trans-Danubian Hungary, the Pannonia of old. They embrace the Austro-Styrian border range between the valleys of the Danube and the Drave, the Vertes Baconi ranges, of which the Baconi forest forms a part, and the group of the Buda Mountains, producing the celebrated wines of that name. Croatia and Slavonia, which are parts of the Hungarian realm, are also traversed by mountains belonging to the Alpine system. We perceive from the preceding account that a large portion of the country is mountainous, but over a third part of it is level land, and so fertile that it may compare to the prairies in North America. The great Hungarian plain, the so-called Alfold lowland, boasts of the best soil for the production of wheat, and stretching down from the offshoots of the Central Carpathians to the frontiers of Serbia, contains upward of 35,000 square miles. The extent of the water system of a country and its distribution is always of the first importance. In this respect, too, Hungary has been blessed by nature. Of the sea she has but little. A small portion only of the Adriatic washes her shores, the so-called Hungarian seacoast, where Fiume, the only important Hungarian seaport city, is situated. The country possesses also some interesting lakes. One, Lake Balaton, 47 miles long and 9 miles wide, has the characteristics of the sea to such an extent that it is called the Hungarian Sea. In this extensive water is to be found the savory fogas fish, and on its shores is situated Balaton Fjord, one of the favorite watering places of Hungary, and near this place is the famous Echo of Tihany. Another large lake is the Ferto, no Sidler, 18 miles long and about 5 miles wide, which became perfectly dry in 1863, so that even houses were built on its bed. But the waters have returned to it within the last few years. Several smaller lakes besides the two mentioned are scattered throughout the country. With rivers, the country is abundantly supplied. Its mightiest stream is the Danube, after the Volga, the largest river in Europe. The whole of Hungary belongs to its basin. Its length in Hungary is 600 miles, and it leaves the country at Orsova after having formed several islands in its course. The largest among these is the great Salo region, which contains 2 towns and over 100 villages, and the most beautiful of them is Margaret Island near Budapest, quite a miniature paradise, frequented by a great many strangers, who come here to get the benefit of its excellent baths. Of the numerous affluents of the Danube, the Theiss is the most important. It has its sources in the country and empties into the Danube on Hungarian soil near Titel. It is navigable for steamships. The Save and Drave are, after the Theiss, the largest tributaries of the Danube. All these rivers send their waters through the medium of the Danube into the Black Sea. Thus harmoniously is the soil of Hungary varied by mountains, valleys, plains, and high plateaus, and gratefully watered by rivers and lakes. And if we but add that the country lies between the 44th and 50th degree of northern latitudes, that is, in the most favorable part of the temperate zone, we may readily infer the superiority of the climatic conditions prevailing there. There is, of course, great variety of climates. The winter is raw and cold. In the Carpathian regions, spring sets in later, winter comes earlier, and the cold sometimes reaches 22 degrees Fahrenheit. In the hilly and level country, the climate is much more genial. The summers hotter and storms of more frequent occurrence. Wheat, grapes, and maize do not ripen in the regions of the higher Carpathians, whilst the Alfold produces the best and finest wheat and even rice. The air is most congenial on the shores of the Adriatic, and here are grown the fruits of southern Europe. The climate, as a general thing, is dry, especially in the Alfold, where trees are rare. Such is the topography and climate of the country, which, lying in the central portion of Middle Europe, stretches between Moravia, Silesia, Galicia, Bukovina, Romania, Serbia, Bosnia, the Adriatic Sea, Istria, Carinthia, Styria, and Austria. It covers an area of 125,000 square miles. 125,000 square miles. And has a population of nearly 16 millions. Politically, the country is divided into three parts, namely Hungary proper, including the formerly detached Transylvania, the city and territory of Fiume, and Croatia and Slavonia. Dalmatia, too, ought to belong under the old laws to the country. But for a long time already, it has owned the supremacy of Austria. Budapest is the capital of the entire kingdom, situated on both banks of the majestic Danube. Here spanned by three beautiful bridges, amongst them the famous Suspension Bridge. It is one of the finest cities of Europe. It has nearly 400,000 inhabitants, and in the center of Hungary's political, cultural, industrial, and commercial life. Fine public and private buildings, some of them beautiful specimens of architectural art, adorn the city, and it boasts wide thoroughfares, among which the delightful Corso along the left bank of the Danube and the Andrassy Ut road leading to the city park, where the National Exhibition of 1885 was located. Deserves special mention. The finest and largest cities besides Budapest are Pressburg, Pozsony, on the left bank of the Danube, formerly the seat of the Hungarian Diet, Komárom, on the Danube, too celebrated for its grand fortifications, Stulweissenburg, Székesfehérvár, once the capital of Hungary, Rab, Győr, Oedenburg, Soproni, Veszprém, one of the oldest cities, Erlau, Eger, renowned for its excellent wine, Szeged, the metropolis of the Alfold, and one of the largest cities, which in 1879 was almost entirely destroyed by the overflowing of the Theiss, but has since been rebuilt more beautifully than before after the latest European pattern. Kassa, the finest city in Upper Hungary. Miskolc, Debrecen, one of the most remarkable cities of the Hungarian Alfold and the seat of a considerable industry. Grosswardein, Nagyvarad, the scene of many important historical events. Arad, Temesvar, and Carlsberg, Gyulafehérvár, all fortified cities memorable in history. Klausenburg, Kolozsvár, the capital of the former Principality of Transylvania. The flourishing Transylvanian towns of Kronstadt, Brasso, and Hermannstadt, Seben, inhabited for the most part by the descendants of Saxons. Fiume, the seaport of on the Adriatic. Agram Zagreb, the capital of Croatia, a beautiful city which, however, was greatly damaged in 1880 by a terrible earthquake. And Essek, the most prominent of the Slavonian towns. The population of the country is composed of various nationalities. The conquering Hungarians did not oppress the ancient inhabitants of the land, but left them undisturbed in the use of their native language. And even in later days, their tolerance went so far as to actually favor foreign and, more particularly, German immigrants. And to this exceptional forbearance alone must be traced the survival of so many nationalities and the lack of assimilation after so many centuries. Classified as to languages spoken by the inhabitants, the chief nationalities number as follows: 1. Hungarians or Magyars, 6,500,000. The ruling, and so to say, the political nationality of the country. Their language, the Magyar, being the language of the state. The language of the Hungarians or Magyars belongs to the Ural-Altaic stock, and must be classified with those mixed languages which have sprung up from the amalgamation of different branches of the said race. In the case of the Hungarian language, we have before us a mixture of the Finnic-Ugrian and the Turco-Tartar idioms, and the question of its fundamental basis has been constantly a matter of dispute between philologists. Its phonetic system as a strictly Asiatic language being essentially different from that of the Indo-European or Aryan languages, we give here the following rules of pronunciation to be used in this book. 2. Germans, 1,900,000. 3. Romans, 2,400,000. 4. Slovaks, 1,800,000. 5. Croats and Serbs, 2,400,000. Rutenes, 350,000. Beside these, there are other nationalities, but in insignificant numbers. The relative numbers of the various religious denominations are, in round figures, as follows: Roman and Greek united, Catholics 60%, Eastern Greek non-united 16%, Lutherans 7%, Calvinists 13%, Unitarians 1/3%, Jews 4%. With respect to their cultural condition, the people may be said to be abreast of the nations of Western Europe in everything but industry, commerce, and some branches of science. In recent years, especially, a great improvement has taken place in popular education, owing to the large and daily increasing number of schools and the law which compels children to attend school. There are, for the purpose of advancing learning and cultivating the various branches of science, a variety of conspicuous scientific institutions, literary societies, reading clubs, and public and private libraries. In journalistic literature, the country is equal to any country on the European continent.